phone charger.
Phone chargers outside.
Nice.
I know where there is one.
Okay.
iPad charger.
Yeah, an Apple like lightning,
I should be able to find one.
22%. I really need to replace my laptop.
Okay, so it is 7 p.m. I would like to call the meeting
No
to
problem.
order. Meeting of council, general meeting, August 16th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Okay, there is a for information only strategic priorities chart, quarter 2, 2022 as item 1. That is on there just for reference purposes. And in terms of the agenda, are there any additions to the agenda that anyone has? No? Okay, I'd like to add item 9.9 before in camera as New North invitation. And the reason for that prior to in camera is because there is information that I will share in camera related to that. In regards to the in-camera agenda, I do want to add also a community safety information update piece.
I'll move to adopt the agenda with the additions.
Okay, is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, so the agenda is adopted as presented with the addition of 9.9 New North invitation. Okay, if you take a look at the minutes from July 19th, 2022, and the minutes from August 2nd, 2022. If there's any thing that needs to be rectified, added, deleted, if not, I am looking for a motion to accept those minutes as presented.
I'll move to accept the July 19th
Okay,
minutes.
we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept both the minutes from July 19th, 2022 and August 2nd, 2022 special meeting minutes as presented. Item number 4, delegations and public hearings. Could we have a motion please to enter into public hearing?
Do we need
Who do we need to go ahead?
all in favor for,
Oh, the minutes?
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Formalities. It's okay.
All
we're
in
getting into
favor
it.
of adopting the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
Well, we've never done both. We've always done separate.
Do we need a separate motion for that, or can they all be put in one motion?
You may do it either way, but
Okay.
we just would like to know preference because we'll set the agenda up accordingly so that there's only
Okay.
one motion in there,
Okay,
however you prefer.
okay, what does council prefer, a separate motions or all in one? They're listed
Should be
as-
separate in case there's something
Okay,
in one of them
so,
that's
so
not.
let's go back and make a friendly amendment to separate those motions. Okay, so for, the motion made by Councillor Clausen and seconded by Councillor Herdisky, the July 19th, 2022 minutes, to be, approved and accepted. Yeah, okay, and let's look for a separate motion for the minutes from our special meeting of August 2nd, 2022.
We only have one motion on the floor.
Oh, okay. So do we need a second motion still?
Yeah.
We will, but we need to
Okay.
adopt, like, we need to carry.
Okay, sorry. So, the motion is to approve the minutes from July 19th, 2022 as presented,
Okay.
right? It's carried, okay?
Carried, yeah.
Moved by Councillor Clausen, seconded by Councillor Herdisky. Okay, let's look at the minutes from August 2nd, 2022. We need a motion to approve those minutes as presented.
Also move.
Okay, Councillor Bashara, and a seconder.
I'll second.
Okay, that motion is carried, approved by,
No, call the question.
All in favor?
so all in favor say aye.
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 All not in favor say nay, okay? So that motion is carried, moved by Councillor Bashara and seconded by Councillor Hordisky. Thank you. Okay, done with those motions. Moving on to delegations and public hearings. Can we please have a motion to enter into public hearing?
So move.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion to enter into public hearing, moved by Councillor Clausen, seconded by Councillor Bashara. That motion is carried. So, all in favor say aye. Anyone against, please say nay. Okay, no one's against that, that motion is carried. Okay. I guess we gotta vote before I carry the motion, right? So, okay, so, public hearing bylaws 664-22, 665-22, 668-22. If we can have a motion to, see if there's anything around those bylaws. Any information, discussion, yeah?
No, just in terms of the public hearing process, I don't believe that there is any further information to share.
Yeah, correct. We haven't received any documents or anything ever since the public notice for the either zoning amendments or
Okay,
the height increase, yeah.
okay,
And concerns raised.
okay.
And then just opportunity, obviously the applicant is not here, but if there's any, and doesn't appear to be any public here, but that would be the only feedback that we'd be looking for is
Okay,
anything from there?
So with no one in attendance and hearing no other submissions, I'll move to adjourn the public meeting.
okay.
Or
So we have a
public
motion
hearing.
for Councillor Clausen, seeing as there is no one in attendance for the public hearing. The motion is to pass these bylaws, so
Second.
do a seconder, seconded by Councillor Bashar. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. Yeah?
It's, the motion's not
Oh.
to pass the bylaws, it's to close the hearing.
No, we
Oh,
just need a
close
motion
the
to
hearing.
close the hearing.
Okay, so there's an amendment for the motion to close the close the hearing, as there is no one in attendance, okay. Moved by Councillor Clausen. Okay, perfect, seconded by Councillor Hordisky. Alrighty. Okay, so we are moving on to, do we still need to close it? Or
It's closed if the motion is
closed as,
carried.
okay, motion is carried, we shall close the public hearing. Okay, moving on to correspondence, temporary road closure, there is a request for road closure. I am assuming this is for information purposes only?
Yeah, Your Worship, we have, we received the request and, we have authority under bylaw to do so. We're just, essentially bringing it to council's attention and making sure that, council can make a motion to direct administration to proceed with the closure. We just wanted a opportunity to make it known, and if there's any objections, then we could deal with those accordingly.
Perfect.
I'll direct administration to allow the road closure.
Okay,
The only, the only thing that I would say is as long as it's proper signage, that section, we'd have to go around in order to, but if they, based on that, I think I'd be in favor.
okay. Thank you.
Even if it advance notice, like the street sweeping signs that we have, like,
Yeah, we'll do our regular process with Public Works to close the barricades and redirect with what signage we have, so.
So do we have a seconder to that motion to approve the request?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the request for road closure, with, prior notice and signage identifying the road closure. So that is moved by Councillor Clausen, seconded by Councillor Hordisky. Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone not in favor, please say nay. Okay, so the motion is carried. Okay, moving on to committee minutes and reports, we have a presentation in 6.1 around the Lac La Ronge Regional Water Corporation minutes. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I'll move the minutes for the July 7th
Okay.
Regional Water Corp.
Do we have a seconder for this motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Councillor Hordisky, all right. All in favor say aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Okay, so we have a motion to accept the Lac La Ronge Regional Water Corporation minutes as presented, moved by Councillor Bashar and seconded by Councillor Hordisky. Motion is carried.
I'll move to enter into committee of the whole.
Okay, thank you,
Second.
Councillor Bashar, and thank you, Councillor Clausen. Okay, so motion by Councillor Bashar to enter into committee of the whole, seconded by Councillor Clausen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. In regards to downtown revitalization. Okay.
Point of procedure before that.
Yeah, for sure.
I believe we removed the need for identifying, unless it was a recorded vote.
We don't identify in the minutes,
Yeah.
but it's just in terms of making sure you have to. In fact, as far as the chair is concerned, they can say, I have a first, do I have a second, or
Yeah.
yes, I have a second, or call the question. That would be acceptable
Yeah.
as well.
Okay,
Just
For sure.
Point of
Yeah,
procedure.
but it doesn't, whatever you guys say, we only transcribe that it was moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess can we do like an interruption here to kind of decide on how we want to proceed? What do you guys want to do? Do you want names identified, moved by Counselor X, seconded by Counselor X?
We
or
already
is it-
had a vote on that a few meetings ago.
This is, in terms of the moving and the seconding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of the concept procedure bylaw, so that's, you may vocalize it if you wish, we just won't record it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah. Okay.
So it's up to you, Chair. I just
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. No, I was just trying to be as formal as possible.
You betcha.
You're doing a great job.
Okay, so as we enter into committee of the whole, we need to look at downtown revitalization. There is a request for direction from administration in regards to procedures. I'll give you a moment just to briefly review that. There is the 2022 cleanup beautification. There's an update provided with plans to do a downtown cleanup by town staff for the week of August 22nd. Request for proposal, update only. Yes?
Oh, I just have a couple of comments and questions to just kind of leave with administration, or they might be able to be answered now, or considerations that I'd maybe like to see. I reviewed the RFP and the steering committee terms of reference and things like that. So would it be best, Chair, if I just kind of like go through, and if a response
Yeah,
is
feel
warranted,
free,
it
yeah.
can jump in. I don't want to take up too much time with it, but just some of the considerations or questions I had upon review. In the study area was identified to not include Brown Street, which would include the Co-op Gas Bar, Creative, any possible business adjacent, and it wouldn't even include the town sign on the highway. Whereas I think that might be an interesting consideration because that is technically an extension of downtown. That's the entrance, that's the gateway. So forgoing that small portion, I think would be a bit, I think it would be better if we did, but that's kind of my thought. When it comes to the deliverables, we have a big opportunity if we're spending the money on a consultancy to really get something more than just a placemaking plan or something like that. So if council agrees with it and administration's favorable to it, getting some sort of baseline study of the downtown, whereas we have the economic corridor study happening. We may want to look at downtown from an we are looking at it, it's revitalization from an economic development perspective. So getting a baseline study of what are the existing businesses and business types, available space, like a baseline of the available space for businesses, commercial or even community use, even like price point, average or baseline for rental, lease space down there, an analysis, if possible, of a migration of the businesses out of the downtown, or if any have migrated in, or organizations if they've taken up residence downtown or moved out of downtown for reasons. Will we be requesting an ownership map, i.e. like a map showing what land is provincially owned, federally owned, locally owned, not locally owned, that kind of thing, to identify if half of downtown is private use and private business, or if it's all government or things like that. That might be helpful in identifying opportunities. There's nowhere in there asking the consultant to look at like documentation of perceptions or the usage of downtown or why people don't use it. So that might be helpful in identifying how to move forward with revitalization. And just some explicit requirements for like baseline data around stakeholder feedback. It has a public benefit beyond the town, and I think any investors, developers, community organizations might be able to find some added value out of getting that data kind of in with that study. Scope. The marina there's a marina mentioned twice. The word retail isn't mentioned at all. And I thought that was it might have been an oversight. I understand we have had conversations in the past about a downtown marina or something along those lines to kind of connect more with the waterfront and provide more services. But we can't forgo the retail, the restaurant, the community-based organization that exists down there. So just pointing that one out. Placemaking is mentioned, which makes me go hip hip hooray, but there's no mention of like the marketing behind it or things like that. So in the scope, will the scope include marketing and branding exercises behind the placemaking? That was good for scope. Consultation. Is there a plan to ensure that the right stakeholders are being consulted with? I know we kind of have a bit of stuff there, but sometimes it can be really easy to overlook some valuable stakeholders. The feedback and engagement record, will we as the town be getting that raw data? Will we be getting the direct information, or is that going to just be distilled? I would prefer to include the raw data. And kind of a little more explicit specificity with some of the stakeholders to make sure that we're hitting business, we're hitting nonprofit, community groups, and some of those big hitters down there. The explicitness might help the consultants target those folks right and not get too siloed in who they're talking to. And then for the steering committee, there isn't an explicit process for filling the position, so I'm not sure if administration has the answer for this or not, or if council would be directing this on how those positions will be filled. Is it just identified self-identification of interested parties, or if it's council choosing? Because but that was kind of my general quick.
No, I can speak to that.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's probably easier for me to just give an overview. I mean, I'm not going to speak to the cleanup stuff that's been discussed, and we're planning that. The RFP itself, in terms of the scope of work, the intent in the RFP, and the RFP has more than just the scope in it, but I just kind of chunked this out for council to get a high-level understanding of what it's going to entail. Is the intent of the scope is really to identify what some of the key deliverables and issues are. So a statement like initiatives to support revitalization and beautify existing businesses and residences and agencies in the downtown area, that would address at a high level some of the things you talked about. Now, what I foresee then is the consultant sitting with the steering committee and saying, this is one of the deliverables, how do we go about that? Do you want us to look at why businesses are leaving, or why businesses have been attracted here? And some of the key questions that might be in the consultation process would be developed in conjunction with that steering committee, so whoever's on there. Also, that steering committee would, as you mentioned, it talks about stakeholders in here, we don't list them all because, again, that would be part of the steering committee providing guidance in terms of who are the key players in the community that need to be talked to, how are we going to go about it, what questions are we going to ask them. So really what this is more meant to be is to say, consultants, you have to address this issue when you do your study. The how is going to be in the detail, and it will be part of their proposal, because that's what we're looking for from them as consultants, is tell us how you would go about making sure that all the key players are involved. So in terms of an RFP, it doesn't go down to that level. But it's good feedback. I made some notes there. In terms of the steering committee itself, which is the main purpose, other than providing an update on where we're at today with this project, is I've drafted a steering committee terms of reference. That's what council needs to ultimately adopt. And then once they adopt the terms of reference, we'll put a call out to recruit members or representatives or both, depending on how council wants to see the makeup and composition of this board be. So for example, in the draft, there's talk about 9 members made up of a couple of council, a couple of business owners, a couple of community members at large, the Chamber of Commerce, etc. I just did that as like a blanket starting point
Standard.
for council to then say, well, we want more of this and we want less of that, or we want more members than 9, or we want less members than 9. So the whole point ultimately to get out from today is feedback in and around that, and their role, which is essentially a steering committee to work hand in hand with these consultants and make sure we're getting these deliverables as you mentioned. So that's what I'm looking for today. We will take that feedback today. I'll revise, and then next meeting council would approve, unless they're prepared to approve as it's written or very closely to, you could do so today. But the intent is to get that feedback, finalize the terms of reference, so then we could go out to, as whatever you identified the members to be, do a general publication of we're recruiting members, we're soliciting up until this date, and then people would put their names forward. In the case of organizations like the Chamber, it would be up to them to provide a representative. But that's what we want to get the ball started so we can start recruiting, form the committee, and have the committee ready to go at the same time we hire the consultant, and then we can hit the ground running. We've set a very aggressive timeline in terms of getting from hiring consultant through to a plan, and the purpose for that is so that we can execute some things in 2023, depending on how complex they are, but at least start the process and get some of this, even the beautification pieces. So you talked about the jurisdiction area. We provided a general that it's LaRange Avenue from Brown Street all the way down to basically near the Legion there, and we've left it a little bit open. Like that's going to be defined further by the steering committee and the consultant in terms of, well, we need to go a little further this way or a little further that way, but we wanted to be clear that it's LaRange Avenue from here to here, and up and down from LaRange Avenue, whether that be a block or in some cases less. That's going to be up to the group to define exactly, but the consultant needs to know an approximate geographic area they're looking at, because that dictates the workload and the amount of consultation that's going to be involved. So
if I'm not mistaken, it says the exact area will be in the RFP.
yeah, like I wanted them to know that it's at least that big, right? Like so. Now, I don't think they're gonna have a big objection if it stretches like half a block this way or half a block that way, but they don't want it to then be double the size or 4 blocks longer. There is a strong likelihood that the Highway 102 plan, which is coming closer to a conclusion, is going to speak to pieces and is probably going to tie into this plan at places like the signage entrance area. So they probably will both coordinate, and in fact, I've spoken to the existing consultant who is also going to bid on this project about the ideas around theming and that sort of thing, which we talked about in terms of branding and then marketing off of that. So again, the steering committee with the consultant and in conjunction with that consultation, they'll come up with that theme and brand. That'll dictate some of the choices for aesthetics and things like that. And then we will go from there in terms of tying the marketing to that brand. That would be more of an ongoing administrative responsibility, but I would expect them to have a very well developed brand so that we could then launch from that.
Cool. Okay. So administration is looking for direction on the size, composition, and the mandate of the committee. Councilor Hordisky?
Yeah, just to comment, like we're making reference to a marina downtown, and I guess my thoughts are, how serious are we about it? Are we prepared possibly to take a piece of existing land and utilize it for a marina to draw into the downtown area?
Well, it's a good point, and I forgot to touch on that one. Essentially, what we wanted to do was, we don't know, much like we don't know what other business types and opportunities they're going to identify, but they've been asked to identify them. And I've specifically included the marina and not like retail or specific stores because that's kind of the existing business community, whereas the marina doesn't exist, so I've made a point to highlight it with the intent of that's another strategic priority that's in the plan. We don't know about whether it'll happen or where it would happen necessarily, but this would at least give an opportunity for council to evaluate whether, if there's interest, whether the downtown would be appropriate and how that might or might not fit in with whatever theme or identity we want for that downtown. So I just wanted to include it because the consultant might otherwise, if it's not listed in there at all, they're going to look at the existing and they might say a marine, there's an opportunity for a marina or for something else related to waterfront development. But if they know that we've triggered that, then they're going to go out of their way to make sure they answer the question.
Okay.
So as it sits right now, the terms of reference for that steering committee, I think looks fine. It's a starting point. Same with the RFP. It's not a tender. It doesn't have to be perfectly specific on all the options, and then it leaves things a little bit open so that we can change things as it's moving forward. So I think both of them look just fine. Although I am a little bit hesitant about doing all these plans without being able to see any action, and we've got the highway corridor on the go, and there's a few other things in the works that are in planning stages, and I just don't want to throw too many things in a plan, although I think this is very important, without being able to see any deliverables. So.
I totally agree. And what we're really doing from administration's side, whether we've got the Highway 102, we've got this plan that we're going to try and get done really quickly. We've got some infrastructure plans that are already done or are being updated right now. We've got the recreation planning going on as well for the replacement of the rec center. And we have the wastewater treatment plan study that's all been done. So we're hoping that as we go into this budget, we're going to show you a 10-year capital plan that you are going to set. And this has to be, this plan, this capital plan, cannot be another one-year capital plan because the numbers that we're going to start to talk about and the implications for borrowing and or taxation and or other things, they're going to start to affect each other. And those decisions can't be made in silos because then you'll be like, we have no money left. So we want to pull all these plans and all the recommendations within those, and the Highway 102 and the downtown would be part of that, and say, here's how we see it, possibly looking. You'll tell us if that's right or wrong, and move things around. And then things might also get axed from the plan. But we'll have done at least the due diligence on all fronts to make sure all those capital items are in there. And Class D, we call it Class D cost estimate. But essentially, here's an initiative, here's a reasonable budget figure, just like with the wastewater treatment plant. We know it's 15-16 million. We have a sense of what our share would be. Then we can look at the rec center, do the same thing with this study is we're going to say, well, it's going to cost 20-30 million. Here's what our share might look like after grants. And then the reality is going to hit, and council's going to have to set the direction for the next 5 years, and 2023 being the first year that we can start executing some of those things, whether that even just be design development, like if we are going ahead with the wastewater treatment plant, 2023 might be detailed engineered design, right? And so you might not see anything, but we're moving towards getting that done.
Yeah, no, I like it.
And it'll allow a lot of predictability in setting mill rates in the future, or how much we do need to look at raising tax revenue.
That's exactly. We need to
So
see everything
Colin-
on the table so we have an idea of what is going to be involved and where we need to
Yeah,
go.
the plans are kind of expensive at the beginning, but the investment is always worth it.
So right now, administration is looking for feedback to amend the terms of reference as presented. Right.
I have one comment. Would we be able to include potentially just the process of identify, is it self-selection volunteers that get put forward, or is this like handpicked by the council, or does administration come forward with a slate of candidates for the committee? I think that if we choose that method, we'll make sure that we have some comment around and some ability to make sure that there isn't too much homogeneity or things like that.
Councilor Curtis, speak.
I think what we should probably consider is how many people from, you know, from the public, or how many people from the chamber are interested in being involved, and then we can fill in, you know, just make it and so it might be, if we don't get as much from the public sector, then we could maybe have an extra councillor, you know, to make it a fair number.
Well,
But I think we should, you know.
I think the way that Lyle has it laid out here is pretty decent, like 2 members from council, 1 from the chamber, 1 from Woodlands Waterways Visitor Center Committee, and 2 from the downtown business community, and 3 members at large. And the members at large, if we can't find the folks to fill that, then
No, I'm
it's
just saying,
unfortunate, but
as long as those, you know, get filled with.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this, was thinking that if we have the way I would set up the terms of reference, my recommendation to council is, if you definitively want a rep there, like council rep or a chamber rep, then state it in the terms of reference, and as much as possible outside of what you definitely want to make sure is just do them members at large, because we'll see who's all interested, and that'll give you the most flexibility to fill the remaining seats. I suggested at least 2 members from the downtown business community. Those could be members at large, and they might just happen to be filled by members of the downtown business community. Or you might end up with more members of the downtown business community because the members at large are from there. So that could happen. In terms of the question around who's appointing, this would be a committee of council, and council would be, the terms of reference would state it, but I would recommend that you appoint. It's not like an open volunteer call where you would just like take anyone who's interested. It may end up working out that way with the members at large anyway. Like, you know, if there's only 4 people interested, they might all get appointed. But we would want to cap that in terms of logistics and continuity, and making sure everyone's informed about the project. So that's the end of my spiel on it.
Okay.
And if you wish to, so if you wanted only 2 council members, or 1 or 3, I would focus on that kind of thing, or the chamber or not, or the downtown business or not. Anything else you have will just be a member at large, and it's just a matter of saying, is 9 the right amount? Do you want 11 because that's not enough, and we want to have more diversity or whatever? Those kinds of feedback is what we're really looking for.
I think the way you have it laid out under committee membership is a great starting point.
It works. So can we have a motion? I'd like to call a question and request a motion from the floor around the steering committee size, composition, and mandate to provide direction to administration.
We're in committee of whole.
Oh, we are?
Yeah, so, well, you have a couple of options. So if you're happy with the terms of reference as is, the committee can make recommendation to council to approve the terms of reference, and when we come out of committee, you would make a motion to accept the committee's recommendation.
Okay, so does anyone have a recommendation that they'd like to put on the floor?
As it's written.
As written, okay. Alrighty. In terms of the next piece here, sign regulations review, item 7.3. Is there any information on that? It's blank on that.
Yeah, sorry, we were asked to put that on the agenda for discussion. Our administration's only comment is, as is indicated in the RFP for the downtown, is advising on how policy and bylaws need to change to meet with the vision and the goals of the downtown plan. We'll be part of that, so we will get the community's feedback on how they feel about those kinds of things, and that might be a timely time to review that. We understand the issues, and it might be a perfect opportunity for council to hear how the rest of the community feels at large about those issues.
Okay. Do we have any recommendations, comments, or?
I think that probably stemmed from when I brought up a couple meetings ago about looking to amend our sign regulations to remove or
alcohol.
to not be permitted to advertise for alcohol or cannabis, but like Lyle said, that does work into that revitalization. It could be a small piece of it, so it can all work together.
Okay. Anyone?
Yeah, I think once we get the report from the RFP, then, you know, whatever recommendations come out of it, then we act on what bylaws need to be changed.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, you'll ultimately get, as with the Highway 102, you're very familiar, is if there's a particular part of any study that you don't like, that doesn't mean you have to implement it carte blanche, but it will give you a strong sense of what the general consensus and recommendations are.
Or
Okay.
study or not, could we request a revised regulation, I guess, to limit those kind of things, or do you wanna
Yes.
wait until?
What I've said in the RFP is I want them to speak to more, I use more general terms, which is bylaw and policy amendments that fit with the vision and the goals of the downtown plan. Now, I'm specifically going to be in contact with the consultants and the steering committee, and I will mention that as an example of some of the past issues that have arisen at the table, so that they specifically keep that in mind and address it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay, moving on to 7.4, daycare survey results, request for direction in terms of municipal support in regards to daycare needs in the community, which we know there are. So there are some ideas presented by administration around things that the municipality could do. There's 5 options presented here. Does anyone have any comments, questions around those?
I'll just say that this is a great informative report here. And I like the way the information was distilled and presented. It's you know, that's, as somebody in town wanting to start a daycare, it's a really great place to start. I'm very supportive of any new municipal public building capital project, that, you know, a building that's open to the public, say if we redevelop the Uniplex, having a dedicated facility in there for a daycare operator. Because I think from a municipal attraction standpoint, that is definitely a key feature to be able to attract families here, to attract diversity in jobs and housing sizes, and diversify our population and actually attract some growth, because we've been shrinking. Like, our 1% growth projections are not exactly valid. They're we're looking at a -1, a -0.5, whatever it is. So to look ahead at ways that we can grow instead of shrink, like a lot of communities in Saskatchewan are contracting is fine, but we do want to grow. So having not necessarily the municipality provide daycare, but provide a facility for a daycare operator to exist in, like Laurent Cooperative said, you know, they might be interested in an opportunity. And it's an existing organization, for example, that could potentially expand and fill the gaps. And that's subsidized daycare. It's a great opportunity if the municipality makes sure that that's kind of an option in future capital.
Mm-hmm. Like, I just want to share, I know a new daycare opened recently and they're already full. They only have space now for children that are 2.5 years and older. All their baby spaces are full. I also know that the government of Saskatchewan is providing free early childhood educator level 1 training. That's just come out. So I think it would really be important for us to maybe meet with the daycare early years consultant from the provincial government to see what opportunities exist there. With Darlene Trudy, I can't remember, early childhood consultant.
I did speak with her, and that's where actually I got a lot of
Oh,
information
okay.
from, but if you guys wanted to meet with her, we could certainly
Well, no,
arrange that.
I think if administration wanted to maybe investigate that route on how we as a municipality could support additional daycare spaces in the community. Joe?
Yeah.
Councilor Fiske?
You know, and I think if somebody wants to open something up and there's, you know, they provide child services, you know, training, education, you know, for younger years, you know, maybe able to qualify for the community grants program.
Yeah.
You know, some of the tax incentives, if they're having to renovate and stuff. And if somebody wants to buy land to something, then maybe we consider giving a break to that type of thing.
I think that's a great idea, opening up the community grant program to home daycares that might be interested in pursuing that as an alternative. I don't know what that would look like.
There's,
but-
I think from a municipal standpoint, there's a lot of money on the table for licensed daycares and day homes. Like if you look at all the grants that have been listed here, one-time and monthly grants per space. There's quite a bit on the table to support that, and I think that's a really great starting point, even just collecting the information here for people who are interested and don't know where to start. I think it's dangerous territory for municipality to get too deep into being a childcare provider, but being supportive of in ways that the municipality can, while maintaining the separation and liability for those things and leaving that to the professionals. Providing space, like with our options here, providing space, providing information, community grants. I think if any provider looking to become licensed, if they came to council with a proposal, I wouldn't, I would definitely give it a lot of consideration because that is promoting our community, right? It's growth in our community.
We've never turned one down.
Exactly. So, I think from the question on the table that administration has asked, which municipal support options are we interested in? Like, I'm interested in moving ahead on whatever is within our capacity right now to do, and continue on looking at the larger capital space provision. Capital development plans that include space for daycare.
I think for simplicity's sake, from administration's point is, I see this as, there's 3 levels of support. The first one, which is a no-brainer, and you've essentially pushed us down this path, which is gather up information so that we can share it with people.
Yeah.
We've done that, so more or less that's a no-brainer. The second is whether you're providing money or whether you're investing money in a facility. That's a second level of support. And the third level is operating, which I would strongly recommend we not get into. So it's really, the question becomes around that second level is, are you open to either A, if there was interest in the community, possibly considering whether it's land, contribution, or money, or B, when we look at a rec facility, including actually providing a space and trying to lease it out to an operator. That's probably where most of the feedback or debate, I think, is probably likely to happen. And again, that level of support, when we put together this long-term capital plan, and you see all of the needs, and you want to, when you're looking at whether the rec center is going to be 20 million or 30 million or more, depending on how many extra spaces you're trying to address, that might be the time where you have these debates, but at least we've gotten to the point where we can share this with all the stakeholders in the community. We can direct people now to the information and the resources that are out there. And unless their direction is to develop something ahead of it, we would again consider with our other strategic priorities, probably during the capital budget process.
So on the operating piece, I'm totally opposed to that too, absolutely opposed. And on funding, opening up our municipal grant program to childcare facilities, I think that would be okay. Or like Councillor Gordisky said, giving a little bit of a break on a piece of land if somebody wanted to build on, that'd be fine. But I don't want to see the municipality owning one and having to either operate it or find an operator for it. I don't want to go down that road even a little bit.
What implication would that have in our community grants program? Is our community grants, forgive me if I don't have it in front of me, is that for nonprofits only, or is that for profit as well?
I'd have to review the policy, and it would depend on who the applicant was, I guess, like if it was a private day home operator versus like a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
It's
When I made reference to it, I was sort of leaning towards if they're providing education, like for, say, ages 3 to 5 or something, where they're actually providing activities, learning activities, something like that would, to me, might qualify. not just anybody that's just operate just to care for it.
Mhm.
You're providing some kind of living,
Mhm.
I think the issue with the existing community grant program is the pot is smallish. I mean, it's reasonable, but it's small, like relative to cost of development. And it would be more probably, as Councillor Orzechowski indicated,
Programmatic.
it would be more to support existing programs or new ideas for programs. Whereas what I was more referring to is if there was an entity like the co-op that wanted to expand and build another facility, well, yes, there's some public grants out there, but if they came up to you handout, would council be interested in making a sizable contribution to making that happen, whether it be land and or money? I think that's different than program support.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd be possibly with some land, but not handing out cash, so.
Yeah, there's a lot we've got on the go right now from well, yeah, we got a lot on our plate. We've got a lot of tax dollars going to lots of different projects, and I'm not.
I think the most feasible thing would be to open the community grant program to a home daycare that was interested in developing or starting one. If we get into regulating daycares or operating a daycare, we don't have the capacity to do that right now.
I'm not even sure I'd be open to that, because from the community grant program, that, in my understanding of in its development, it was meant to be for like nonprofit groups, community groups, like that are not, and a home daycare is for profit, right?
It
That's
is.
somebody's livelihood. So they're not in it for the, they're not reinvesting.
But it's a need, right? If we
It's a
look at-
need, yeah.
Look at retention of the workforce, right?
But there's it's dangerous territory, I think, to get into that, because then we're gonna be having to consider a lot of other things potentially. It's a slippery
Yeah.
slope.
I'll just
But if it's
close
like
it-
a program that a daycare wants to put on, then like
Just close the debate here and say, let's just go with
yeah.
handing out the information to whoever's interested
Okay,
and go from there.
we have a
That's it.
recommendation on the table. All right.
Yeah.
I'll move to
Councillor.
rise and report.
I'll
Seconder.
second.
Okay, so we have a motion to rise and report, and we have a seconder. Okay, moving on to bylaws, yes?
Before we move forward, just the recommendation from the committee to adopt the steering committee terms of reference as presented, if that's a motion.
I'll move to
Okay.
adopt terms of reference as presented for the steering
Okay.
committee.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. Motion is carried. Okay, so moving on to bylaws, we have a bylaw 664/22, second reading, a request for decision around this bylaw.
I'll
As
move the
presented.
second reading.
Sorry? Are you-
I'll move the second
You'll
reading.
move, okay, yeah. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
You'll second the reading, okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
I'll move the third reading.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the third reading?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Aye. Anyone opposed? Nay. Okay, that motion is carried. Bylaw 665/22, second reading. Do we have a motion for that bylaw?
So move.
Okay, and do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed say nay.
I'll move third reading.
Motion is carried. Third reading, moved. Do we have a seconder for the third reading?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Bylaw 668/22, second reading. Request for decision on that bylaw.
I'll move that we give second reading to bylaw 668/22.
This was for the height amendment, is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah, so
Okay.
there'll be discussion.
Yeah. Do we have
I'll
a
second.
seconder?
I'll second.
Seconder? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? Okay, motion is carried. Third reading for bylaw 668/22.
I'll
Do we
move the
have a
third.
mover? Okay, we have a mover for the third reading. Do we have a seconder?
I'll
Okay,
second.
seconder. All in favor say aye.
Discussion.
Discussion, do you want discussion, please? Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so we have a discussion for 8.3.1.
So this is to amend in community services the bylaw of medical facilities. And just on record, we know that the fire department doesn't have a ladder truck, and access to the roof may be an issue with a ladder. The building does have fire suppression, as any health facility would, provincially regulated. Do we have official fire department comment on record in regards to this bylaw?
No official record, but I know fire chief has many concerns about the building height. But I mean, we already allow this building height in the C2 district, so it's no different than what we already allow. It's no
Right.
taller, so just keep it out of the zoning district.
Has the height change with the comments of the fire department that's been communicated to Sask Health and they've formally acknowledged such?
Oh, say again,
Sask Health, just the developer of the facility, is aware and has formally acknowledged that the existing fire department cannot respond to a call that may require a ladder.
I think just to supplement what Mr. Bender is talking about is they obviously are aware that this required a bylaw amendment, so they're aware of what the regulations were.
Mm-hmm.
They're also aware that their existing facility exceeds the regulation.
Yeah.
So they're well aware of the situation.
Yeah.
That's probably the most we could say.
But
Okay.
they're designed based on what's functional for that facility is what it is, and I think this discussion will have to happen in terms of, for fire protection, there's time from before the building is completed to have discussion and see whether that can be worked into the plans to get that type of vehicle.
Fair enough.
I was gonna like to add, I don't know if the fire chief's online wants to comment about this, but I know it's been up a few times about fire trucks and fire access, because there are other buildings in town that we can't access already.
Mm-hmm.
And the engineer, the plans they're submitting, they will be addressing fire suppression in those drawings, so they're already looking at making sure there's adequate pressure for the sprinkling system and things like that. But I'll let, if the fire chief wants to speak.
Chief Cloud, do you have any comments to add or concerns around this?
But yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
There's an echo. Yeah, so I did raise the concerns about building height, just due to the fact that we don't have an aerial ladder truck. That is on our fire department's strategic plan.
Okay. So when you say it's on the fire department strategic plan, in what year do you plan to possibly have this?
I think it probably is, I start sounding like a broken record, but when we prepare this 10-year capital plan for you,
Okay.
the fire strategic plan, the highway 102 plan, the downtown plan, the
It'll be on
wastewater
the
plan,
Okay.
they'll all be in there. So you'll get a good sense of everything that's possibly coming forward, and then you can decide how to weigh those.
That's great.
So we have a
Yeah,
more.
and certainly, so with the sprinkler system of the building, I've also raised concerns with that, but if there is an adequate supply, then it would be a system similar to the airport, the NOA hangar, where they have their own supply of water and pumps on site. So even if we didn't have enough water pressure, there's a workaround with that.
Okay. So we do have this motion on the table, 668-22, which has been moved and seconded. So if we could call the question and vote on this, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. Okay, the motion is carried. Next item on the agenda, 8.4, bylaw 670-22, which includes a few pieces. So there's a request for a decision around that bylaw for the first reading. As it pertains to the fire bylaw, the fireworks bylaw, fire and emergencies bylaw, Appendix A, Schedule A1, Schedule A2.
I'll move the first reading of bylaw 670/22.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Chief Cloud, are there any concerns, information as they pertain to this reading?
So this is just more for first and second reading. It's just to gauge your guys' interest or concerns or comments.
Okay,
So if there is comments or anything you'd like changed, I would take it back, make those changes, and then go for a third reading rather than doing it all at once. The plan is to have Aaron and the band on the same bylaw. That way it's easier for myself and our department to enforce, and it's also easier for our residents to understand, that there's a similar bylaw in all three communities. This is on our strategic priorities list, so this will be one of our projects knocked off that list. As mentioned, there is the fireworks bylaw that will be kind of put into this bylaw as well, and kind of declutter the rest of our bylaws, if you will. We're just trying to look at ways to kind of clean up our bylaws, kind of put them together where it makes sense. So there's fireworks in there. But there's a high-level summary on the report that you can see, so if there's any questions, I can definitely answer them.
And it's something that the fire board has gone back and forth on for about the last year, trying to clean it up, so it's looking pretty good now, if you ask me.
any questions or discussion from the table?
You know, and the fact that you had consultant that did a lot of good advice to, to the board, and I think a lot of work's gone into this, and I don't see anything that bad concern to it, so I'll support it.
Chief Cloud's put a lot of work into this too.
So can we have a motion?
Motion's on the table.
Oh, it is, sorry. So, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. Okay, motion is carried.
I'll move the second reading of bylaw 670/22.
I'll
Okay,
second.
seconder. Okay, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to section 9, business. So we have our financial reports, which includes the budgetary control report, accounts for approval, check reconciliation report. I'm looking for a motion to accept these.
Move that council approve the following financial reports: budgetary control, July 31st, list of accounts, August 11th, and check reconciliation, August 6th.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion is carried. In regards to the building report, 9.2, information provided July 2022, and building and development permit report.
I'll move that the building report of August 16th be accepted as presented.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed say nay. Motion is carried for the building reports, 9.2. Item 9.3, request for decision, Mamir and Papier's daycare, request for decision, and the zoning bylaw, section 4.145, sorry. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that council proceed with option A, direct staff to initiate discretionary use application process for home-based business on lots 24 and 42, block 39, plan ADPA 19051.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion, questions, concerns? No? Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Motion is carried. Item 9.4, fire services agreement, request for decision around the fire services agreement. Provided is the 2022 fire service agreement, the fire board policy manual, the 2007 fire service agreement.
I'll move that council authorize mayor and chief administration to execute 2022 fire service agreement.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, any questions, discussion, or concerns around this? No? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. Okay, motion is carried. 9.5, request to decommission service line. We have a letter, we have a sales agreement, and we have the connections bylaw 430-93.
So we had this discussion when we sold this property, and we're quite clear that water line decommissioning would be on their cost, and they're asking here that because they hit bedrock that we cover some of that cost. Sorry, but that's not the town's responsibility.
Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns? No?
I'm in total agreement.
Okay, so do we have a motion around this, and then we can vote around that motion? And
I'll move to approve.
okay, do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay.
Just for clarity, just clarifying that the intent was to approve option A. proceed with option A.
And then
Not to approve the request, but to approve option A, which is to direct
Or we defeat it.
administration to respond, if that's their
reply
responsibility.
that we've already done.
Just,
Yeah.
just wanna make sure.
So I
Yeah.
make it clear, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so, any further discussion on that? No? Call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion is carried. Item 9.6, request for decision, request for title transfer, letter of request from lawyers, sales agreement, proposed amendment to sales agreement.
I'll move to direct administration to, sorry, I'm
Seek a
reading the
legal
wrong thing.
opinion.
Yeah, and my apologies to council, but the request came in very last minute in terms of trying to come up with a recommendation for council, and at the end of the day, because they're asking for an amendment to an agreement that's already been vetted through legal, and that amendment might dramatically change our rights, and just in terms of if they still owe us money for the land, the concern is that if they have title, any other interest may put a lien on or claim an interest to the land. And so we believe that's the way it would work, but we're not 100% comfortable. Perhaps when our manager of planning and development starts later this week, he might be more well versed in how this might impact that agreement. But either way, I would feel comfortable if this was tabled at least till the
Okay.
next meeting.
I think in the past, like, we don't wanna create undue hardship for the developer.
Right.
So we gotta find a way to kind of assist without the risk.
And this has been done in the past, but as long as
The
that,
payment was done.
as long as the payment is in full, I'm totally in favor with transferring that over. They've got substantial completion already, like they're definitely started on it, so as long as we have our money, I have no problem with it going to title, because they need to go to the bank and they can't do that until it's not a lease anymore.
And again, I'm not my area of expertise, but my hope was that they were their lawyer was gonna craft something that would essentially state explicitly that once they had their mortgage, they would be required to transfer payment, and then that would address that issue and somehow tie them together.
Worded like a caveman or something.
Yeah, something that is stronger than just.
Well, and the municipality
Or
could,
from their bank.
the municipality
I've
could
done-
potentially
we've done that
lien
before.
an interest on, like, register an interest on the property for such a thing, but
And we would.
Long
The
term.
issue is
long term,
if there was 3 interests on there
Yeah.
and they go
what takes
bankrupt, and
precedent?
now we have to sell the land and we're divvying up what's left.
Mhm.
I'm not sure where our rights would stand, and that's why I wanted to have more of an opinion.
If, like, I mean, if it's a requirement in order to get a mortgage, then if we can, like Matt suggested, and it's happened in the past where there's an agreement between the bank and the town, and when that mortgage money comes in,
It comes
the
straight to
land
us.
gets paid off.
Yeah, and I agree, like if we had something that would be similar to like when you do a private sale, essentially those funds are directly into the seller's account. Where if we had that kind of an assurance in the amendment to the agreement, I would have no issue whatsoever. So it's a matter of, I think we just need to work with them and maybe consult our own legal if we have to, but
Yeah.
just not comfortable recommending anything yet.
I'm totally fine with that. I think this is a good opportunity too, if we wanna be more development ready, development friendly here. While we're getting this legal opinion, look at it at a more high level stance as to what can we include in our lease agreements, our
Sales agreement.
sales agreements, to actually prepare for this, because
This hurdle happens often during.
Yeah.
Well, that
so-
was my point, is like, well, if we don't really require this, why is it even in there?
Mhm.
So that was kind of where I was coming from, is this is probably in here for a reason.
Well, however, this is not your usual agreement, because there was some negotiating that happened in terms of what the sale was gonna look like and then what the conditions were included, so.
Yeah.
It's not your,
I would be okay if you had a letter of commitment from their financial institution saying that the town will be paid upon approval of their mortgage and the transfer would happen at the same time. It's happened like that lots of different times. Both of our bases are covered and then we're not incurring such legal costs too that we don't necessarily need to.
If I'm comfortable with just the direction today in terms
Okay.
My understanding is that you expect me to protect the interests of the municipality with regards to the payment, but you want me to work with the developer, and we'll do our best to make that happen.
Okay, so we could have a motion directing administration in this regard.
So,
Okay. What this motion, we're tabling it, is that what you're moving?
I'm basically gonna make a motion just based on the last comment.
Okay,
So it wouldn't be the table, but just in
Table.
terms of the provisions guiding administration,
okay,
which
so,
we'll reiterate what was said earlier in the motion for you guys.
okay, so do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. That motion is carried. Item 9.7, grader purchase. We have a request for a decision around the purchase of a grader. There is a quote from Flynn Cat and there's a quote from Brandt.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was this on SAS Standards or where was it advertised? Or was it specifically to a couple of outfits or?
Well, Ken initially worked on this prior, and I know that he went through and got a few different quotes. I'm not sure exactly who else I kind of picked up after him.
We had it on the budget, we didn't approve it because of funding.
It was approved if,
And
if we could get funding, yeah.
Right, yeah, so now that we've been approved, so now we make a decision on what we do.
I'm kind of wondering why there's only two different ones, like if it actually went out to a public offering or if it was invitational. I had somebody call and complain that they didn't get a chance to bid on it, is why I'm asking.
Okay.
I don't
And
know.
great work finding a grant, thank you, Trevor.
Yeah, I don't know the whole story, but I mean, if you want, we can definitely go back and redo the process.
How long will that take?
Yeah.
We would be back at the next council meeting,
Oh, okay, so that's reasonable. Well,
like 3 to 4 weeks.
okay. So if that's what council has an appetite for, we would need a motion in that regard.
I would move in that direction.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Oh, sorry, Abby.
Does it
I'll
affect any
second,
of
I'll
the,
second that.
does it, before we vote, Trevor, does it affect any of the grant that you secured?
No, it does not affect the grant fund bit, no.
Okay.
Okay, so,
And reality is, we require a public process for something of this value anyway. My only question, and unfortunately doesn't have the resource on the line, and I apologize for that, but is whether we went through a purchasing program that met those requirements, or whether it was on SAS tenders or both. That we'll have to look into, but if we're not comfortable, then we'll just prepare one on SAS tenders. And that'll be fine.
I think we should, especially because someone did call and complain about it.
okay, Councilor Liskey?
The only concern I have with that is we see the prices here and how we wants to see any future bids, are they gonna be able to know what the other two bids are?
Well, if we do an actual process, then everyone would be resubmitting whatever bid they wish.
Well, if that's
Yeah,
what the intent is.
yeah, that would be the intent because they've just provided us with a quote.
It would be in a sealed tender is what I would.
Yeah, it would be a formal tender process.
That's the only concern I have. Is just-
Yeah, so if they wish to revise their bids, they could at that time.
Ensuring that we have a proper public process. If it hasn't been executed, then of course we should be doing this the right way. I'm sure that whoever put this together was doing the best that they were able to with whatever direction they got. So
This may be some of the work that Ken.
It may very well have been done properly, but I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
comfortable saying for sure, so I'd recommend just deferring, and then we'll either get the answer and come back, or we will do the process
Okay.
as required.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table. All in
motion
favor?
was to,
Sorry?
what was the motion?
To retender.
To
Retender, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So we do have a mover, and we do have a seconder. All in favor say aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Motion is carried.
Sorry for the extra work, Trevor.
No, that's
Okay.
totally fine.
So moving on to item 9.8, request for decision, signing authority to retrieve payments from the CAFT system.
I'll move that council proceed with option A to appoint Darian Parada as CAFT payment signing authority for the sole purpose of receiving CAFT payments
Okay.
online.
And do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. Motion is carried. And item 9.9, New North invitation. An invitation has been extended to all Northern Saskatchewan mayors to attend a special meeting on August 23rd in Prince Albert due to an internal issue that has occurred, which I can brief council on when we go into camera. I guess the motion we do need is, do we want council representation at this meeting? Would be
And just to clarify, it's a special general meeting, and that's why we
Yeah.
requested our attendance. This isn't the board of directors, this is all members.
all voting members. So, we could have a motion around
Sending a representative.
our representative, yeah.
I would like to attend if council would send me.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve attendance to that meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, do we have a seconder? Okay, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed say nay. Motion is carried. So as we look at item number 10, we enter into in camera. We need a motion to enter in camera.
I'll move to enter into camera.
Okay, and do we have a seconder?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Motion is carried. And we are going off live feed.